Good afternoon, I'm Andrew Neil and this is Times Radio. Yesterday on this programme we told you that Iran had few good options in retaliating against Israel for its offensive against Hezbollah, Iran's powerful, or maybe we should say once powerful, Lebanese-based proxy. 24 hours later, and it's clear raining down ballistic missiles in Israel for the second time this year was not one of these good options. As with the attack last April, so this time Iran failed to do much damage to Israel, and there are no reported Israeli fatalities. Most will credit the efficacy of Israel's missile defences. Some will see a second miracle of the year. Iran has played itself into a corner. Its Hezbollah allies are still under siege from Israel's onslaughts, and the Tehran regime now waits nervously to discover what Israel has in store for it. The one factor which has muted Israel's response in the past has been fear of attack by Hezbollah. That's no longer a constraint. Iran's insurance policy has been diminished. So we can be sure Israel's retaliation will be more substantial than the one attack it launched on an Iranian military facility after April. But it still might not be a massive attack. Jerusalem senses that Tehran is even less keen on an all-out war than Israel. But a 180 ballistic missile attack can hardly go unpunished. Israel will want Tehran to know it can strike any target in Iran. To illustrate that, it will likely pick and choose from Iran's missile sites, its drone plants, and maybe even its nuclear weapons development sites. It might even target the regime. Nobody at the top of the Iranian government can be sleeping soundly these days. We'll know in the next few days. The main constraint on Israel is its need to avoid fighting on too many fronts. It's still dealing with the remnants of Hamas. It's now engaged in decapitating and degrading Hezbollah. It has the Houthis to deal with in Yemen. All-out war with Iran might be a war front too far. But response there will be. If Israel wanted any encouragement, Hezbollah provided it this morning by launching 100 more rockets into northern Israel. I'm joined now by Larissa Brown, defence editor of The Times. Welcome, Larissa. And before I get on to some of these issues, let me ask you, you've got some breaking news that an Israeli commando unit clashed or was ambushed by Hezbollah near tunnels on the inside Lebanon, just north of the Israeli border.
Yes, this is one of my colleagues is on the ground with Israeli forces. And he's been told by one of those Israeli troops that, yes, they came up against an ambush inside southern Lebanon, and an unconfirmed number of Israeli soldiers were killed in that ambush. The details are that are still coming through, but of course, this would be the first time that Israeli troops have been killed on Lebanese soil as part of this ground invasion that they launched just a couple of days ago. The so-called sort of invasion was meant to be sort of limited strikes going into villages and towns near that border to dismantle Hezbollah's rocket facilities. But of course, they are likely to face intense bombardment from Hezbollah, which is dug into those hillsides and also has an extensive tunnel network underground, which means that they can pop up anywhere really behind the Israeli forces and ambush them, as we've seen in this scenario.
Indeed, well, we'll see what the developments are, because the great fear of Israel that this is the kind of thing it's now up against. It's been there before and it's been very difficult for it. Larissa, what's the latest on the prospects and manner of Israel's retaliation against Iran for last night's attack?
Well, we've heard from various people this morning, senior US officials, also obviously the Israelis, and Israel's top diplomat in the UK was warning this morning of severe consequences after last night's attack. I've been looking at various options that Israel could decide to go ahead with. Arab officials have been saying that actually Israel warned Iran that if it did go ahead with these strikes, as was widely anticipated, then Israel would strike back by hitting Iran's oil and nuclear facilities. Now, both of those targets would be considered quite a dramatic escalation that then presumably Iran would then want to respond to. There has been some suggestion actually in the in IRGC affiliated media outlets coming out of Iran that if Israel did choose to hit those oil facilities, then Iran would then retaliate by striking other oil facilities in the region, such as in Saudi Arabia, which would of course push up oil prices. If they then choose to hit those nuclear facilities instead, that would again be a huge escalation. Previously in April, Israel just attacked a site nearby those nuclear facilities, and that was sort of a symbolic act just to show Iran exactly what it was capable of. But if it directly goes ahead and targets those facilities, we can expect a huge escalation in the region, I think.
Does Iran have anything more powerful to throw at Israel compared to last night?
Well, you're touching upon the sort of ultimate weapon there, because what Iran could end up doing, one expert was telling me, is they could rapidly speed up their nuclear weapons program. They're not actually that far from having nuclear weapons. And the ultimate fear here is that Iran has all of its facilities and weapons storage warehouses taken out by Israel, and it feels that the only option it has left is indeed its nuclear weapons. So it's all pretty terrifying, and there's a lot at stake here.
Which may be the reason why Israel will think the nuclear facilities are what should be attacked next if they haven't got conventional weapons any better than what they threw at Israel last night. Does Israel have enough anti-missile missiles in its various systems to deal with a further ballistic missile attack?
I think Iron Dome is pretty limitless. It costs about, I think, $100,000 for them to fire their defensive mechanism against.
But that's for short-range rockets coming in, isn't it?
Yes, and they've also got various other systems, including the Arrow system. I've not seen anything to suggest that Israel could run out of these capabilities, but of course, this war in general is having a huge economic toll on the Israeli government, and so it's not going to be able to last forever. But of course, they're reliant on help from the US, which is sending Israel billions. So they are getting the help that they need.
And of course, the US military was involved in helping Israel last night see off the Iranian attack. The British are claiming to have helped Israel last night too. If we did, it must have been pretty marginal.
It's a bit bizarre because we basically got this statement from John Healey, the Defence Secretary, last night, hours after this attack took place, basically saying that the Brits had played a role in helping to defend Israel. But it wouldn't go into any other detail, and I've been trying to speak to the MOD today, and again they won't offer up any more detail on what the role that Britain played was. We do know, however, that Typhoon aircraft were in the region at the time. They had been scrambled, but they can't defend against ballistic missiles. They can only defend against drones, which was the case in April. So they were used in April, but this time they weren't necessary. Whether that's what Healey is referring to, I'm not sure. It's possible that we had some sort of intelligence capability in the region, and we're sort of feeding Israel information about those missiles that had launched. But it's all a bit sort of strange, and we're not really getting those details.